The objectives for this chapter is going to be define and understand the importance of materials management, discuss methods of valuing inventory, identify costs related to inventory, and discuss the ratios used to evaluate inventory performance. So what is managing materials? Well, there are two different definitions that they use. One is going to be inventory management is the management and control of the inventory or items that have an expected useful life of fewer than 12 months. And also, materials management is defined more broadly than inventory management. Materials management is the management and control of inventory, services, and equipment from acquisition to disposition. When it comes to managing materials, there are two major categories of materials. The first is going to be one that involves patient care, and that's going to be medical supplies, surgical supplies, drugs, linens, and food. On the other side of that, you got the administration materials. It's going to be housekeeping supplies, office supplies, and other supplies not used for direct patient care. When it comes to the importance of material management, there are two key reasons. One is an organization must have the right kind and the right amount of supply on hand for patient care. Because you're not going to want to order too much of supplies and not use them, and vice versa, not having enough to provide care to your patients. And the second is going to be effective material management helps control the cost. Going back to what I briefly just touched on, when it comes to managing materials for patient care, the right kind of supplies for patient care can be determined by the materials manager with the help of a user committee. The right amount of supplies can be more difficult to project for three reasons: time, uncertainties, and discontinuities. Now, when it comes to effective material management and helping control the cost, this is because inventory, like accounts receivable, is a non-productive asset. It does not grow or produce income. In fact, both accounts receivable and inventory lose value over time. For accounts receivable, the more time an account spends in receivables, the more likely it will become uncollectible. The more time an item spends in inventory, the more likely it will become stolen, expired, or lost. Our textbook discussed 4 common methods of valuing inventory: first in, first out, last in, first out, weighted average, and specific identification. We're going to dive into these in the next few slides. The first one, which is first in, first out, is pretty self-explanatory. It is the first item put into inventory is the first item taken out of inventory. First in, first out produces an inventory of newer items. The total cost of inventory is determined by multiplying the unit cost of the newest items in inventory by the number of units in inventory. The next method is last in, first out. And this is the last item put into inventory is the first item taken out of inventory. Last in, first out produces an inventory of older items. The total cost of inventory is determined by multiplying the unit cost of the oldest items in inventory by the number of units in inventory. Next, the weighted average is a method that determines the average cost of items placed in inventory and then multiplies the average cost by the number of units in inventory. The last method the textbook discussed is specific identification. This method determines the actual cost of each item in inventory. Specific identification is used when inventory items are easy to identify and when the cost of each inventory item is high. A lot of people don't realize that the cost of inventory can rise very quickly if proper attention is not given to this department. To minimize the total cost of inventory, the materials manager must have a good understanding of inventory cost. Inventory costs are reflected in these following issues: how much of an item to order each time, when to order the item, and the cost of the item. I think one thing that doesn't really go into this is how much interdepartmental conversation needs to take place so the person ordering these supplies is not ordering too much, isn't ordering them too late, etc. Now on to ordering cost. Ordering cost, or O, is the administrative cost associated with placing a single order for the inventory item. Total ordering cost associated with an inventory item is dependent on the number of orders placed for the item. The number of orders is derived by dividing demand by the size of a single order, called quantity, or Q. Total ordering cost for an item in inventory is then derived by multiplying the number of orders per year by the ordering cost. Total ordering cost is D divided by Q multiplied by O. Carrying cost is the cost of holding an inventory of items. When an organization holds items in inventory, carrying costs include an opportunity cost at least equal to the average cost of inventory holdings, derived by multiplying the price of the item P by the average number of items in inventory, multiplied by the interest rate I at which the organization could have invested. Stockout cost, S, is the cost associated with having insufficient inventory holdings to meet demand. Stockout cost includes the purchasing cost and ordering costs associated with a STAT, which is immediate order, and the intangible cost of loss of goodwill among the organization's medical staff and patients. If the stockout results in injury or death for the patient, the stockout cost would include the costs associated with this adverse event. The stockout cost is derived on a case-by-case basis. The overstock cost, expressed grammatically as L, is the cost associated with having more than enough inventory holdings to meet demand. Overstock cost includes the carrying costs associated with stocking items for additional accounting periods until the organization uses and expenses the items. This is the part of the PowerPoint that we started getting into a lot of equations. So like I said, if you get lost, this is all just taken out of our textbook. The first one we're going to figure out is the purchasing cost. And expressed grammatically, purchasing cost, PD, is the total cost paid to vendors for a specific item during an accounting period or year. Purchasing cost is derived by multiplying the price of the item, P, per unit paid to the vendor by the demand, D, or the annual amount of the item used. And that translates into purchasing cost equals P times D.